Hey everyone, I'm with Gil Duran. You know him, you love him. He's a three-time guest of the Left Hook. I owe him a mug. Once he joins the five-timer club, he's going to get a jacket. And he is here because I wanted to find out whether or not we will get taken in the Rapture. The time right now is 1:05 p.m. The Rapture has not come for me yet. The fact that I can see Gil means no Rapture yet, but the day is young. So we might not get the Rapture. But MAGA's holy war is here, and we're all still processing the really disturbing cult fest that was Charlie Kirk's funeral slash memorial, which was actually a political rally. And in that political rally, many disturbing elements from Stephen Miller's Goebbels speech to Donald Trump literally rejecting love and grace and going all in on a 45-minute Festivus rant. But there were also signs and usage of Christian nationalist language and holy war language that Gil, and you got to give Gil credit, said the next step for MAGA as it's dwindling in power is to go all in with the good versus evil type of cosmic warfare and narrative. And Gil called us out, I think, what, last month, Gil?
hmm
Yeah, and lo and behold, what people aren't picking up on is this holy war, us versus them, good versus evil, literally like angels versus demons type of rhetoric and framing that is now going to be part and parcel of MAGA's project moving forward. So with all of that, Gil, I give it to you. Let's take the DeLorean back a month where you predicted, looking at where some of these MAGA broligarchy folks were going with this good versus evil demon language.
Definitely. Well, I spent a lot of time over the past couple of months thinking about the biblical Antichrist, mostly because Peter Thiel, the tech billionaire, co-founder of Palantir and PayPal, has been going around the world giving these lectures on the biblical Antichrist. And right now he's giving a four-part lecture in San Francisco about the Antichrist, a secret Antichrist lecture. And so I was started looking into this actually earlier because I noticed in Silicon Valley, because I cover these tech figures very closely, a few of them had started to adopt this very religious language. Catherine Boyle, who's a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, gave a speech in the spring where she described Christ's crucifixion as the a result of government policy and extrapolated that this is what governments do to families, what they did to Christ's family. We've seen this sort of move toward this weird kind of doomsday evangelism Christianity in Silicon Valley. So by paying attention to the language, I started to see this demonic, evil, apocalyptic framing pop up. And when it got to the Thiel Antichrist lectures, I looked up all of his previous speeches, and what he basically does is provide a playbook for political holy war. His main point of his Antichrist speeches is that historically people have used the Antichrist or doomsday apocalyptic ideas to great effect in politics. He stopped short of saying that's exactly what should be done, but then he names Antichrists like tech regulation, Greta Thunberg, etc. So by watching the language, I was a bit early, but I was able to see it coming. And when I said back on, I think it was August 31st, that I said kind of be on the lookout for this increase in religious meme warfare as the Republicans start framing this as good and evil. I did not, of course, expect that within a couple of weeks, Charlie Kirk would be killed and they would go full on into demons, angels, antichrist narrative.
And what did you see at the political rally that was well, the memorial masquerading as a political rally?
Well, the whole thing was to position him, Charlie Kirk, as a religious martyr.
Yeah.
And as you know, one step beneath Jesus Christ, there are already calls to canonize him, make him a saint. So this is the typical behavior of apocalyptic cults, right? You find some martyr figure to rally around, and you base your crusade on that person's death. It's not just in Christianity, by the way. We have the same dynamic in different religions where there's a dead leader who now becomes the rallying cry, the hero, the divine intercessor between God and humankind. So it was all a religiously framed rally. And the danger of this, I went back and did a lot of research. Historically, through thousands of years, the use of apocalyptic frameworks has been used to drive revolutionary or social movements that often end in violence
Yep.
because you're framing it as we're good, they're evil. Like we're literally with God, they're literally with Satan or the Antichrist. And we've seen this before. There was a lot of that framing during the uh, war against Al Qaeda. And all the way back to the beginnings of this country, the Native Americans were cast as agents of Satan or the Antichrist. The British during the American Revolution were the Antichrists or the evil ones. All of our enemies are always evil. And there's even a book that a historian wrote about it called Naming the Antichrist, The History of an American Obsession. So um, it's dangerous when things get to this point. At the same time, because I know this is some dark and disturbing stuff, talking about apocalypse, end times, Antichrist. This is a movement, the MAGA movement, that is flailing. They are highly unpopular, riddled with scandals. Everywhere you look, there's a scandal. So they really need to change the narrative. And they're hoping that people will be dumb enough to believe that these corrupt and crooked people who are destroying our country are somehow Christians. I don't believe any of them are Christians. I think they are manipulating religion for political purposes.
Yeah, well, you and me are on the same page, and bringing that out really pissed them off. I was in the Lions Den yesterday and went against Piers Morgan, Perry Lake, Eric Bowling, and Tim Miller. I did it so you didn't have to. And the attempt, it is a cult. It's getting more and more cultish. I saw the memorial. I also saw what they said at the Kennedy Center Memorial, and I've been following the language as well. And what I said was, this is a hella weird, because I'm from NorCal, hella weird, disturbing cult. And I know that for MAGA, because you and I follow MAGA, they're all in on it, but MAGA is not the majority. And I was also in Canada, Gil, over the weekend, and people in Canada are like, that's hella weird. And I know for a fact that the majority of Americans and the majority of people saw that display and like, this looks like a really strange right-wing cult, like this type of stuff that we used to read about. Hagiography, good versus evil, like theatrics, fireworks. And then what was really interesting, Gil, was Erica Kirk, the widow, comes and she gives a speech, and then she, forgives Tyler Robinson, and talks about love and mercy. People clap. Literally right after, Donald Trump comes, I'm sure you saw that, and says, Charlie forgave her, Erica forgave him. I don't forgive. I hate my enemies. I hate them. And then they still applauded. So it was both love and vengeance. I don't think people realize that. And mostly it was vengeance, this desire for they, them, right? It was Tyler Robinson, but they still don't just attribute blame to Tyler Robinson, who was a white man, apolitical, from a Christian family. Over 2 weeks, even over the weekend, they have used Tyler Robinson murder of a Charlie Kirk as, like you said, a crusade against they and them. And the they and them is anyone and everyone from the left, the radical left, Antifa, which is now a terror organization, transgender people, right? So it's really interesting. It reminded me of the Germans, specifically Goebbels. What do you do with Horst Wessel, the 21-year-old SA member, right? But and for those who don't know, Horst Wessel was a member of the paramilitary, youth wing of the Nazi movement. He was murdered by I think one or two communists. Goebbels in 1930 elevated him into like this martyr figure. 2 years later, in 1932, they did the "Storm is Coming" speech. Literally, if you listen to Stephen Miller, he like it's almost a parallel. He just took Goebbels' "Storm is Coming" speech and did it over the weekend. And then 1933 he did the Reichstag fire, which, for those who don't know, is when the Nazis consolidated power and did martial law. I think this is like the same playbook, but with Christianity, just like kind of infused with it.
That's the theme of Peter Thiel's Antichrist lectures. He literally mixes biblical scripture with the philosophy of Carl Schmitt, who was a Nazi. And Carl Schmitt's main point was that religion is really, politics is really religious concepts disguised as other things, as secular things. So religion is politics. And politics is about a battle against an existential enemy. And the ultimate aim, the ultimate way to win, is to declare an existential emergency and then eliminate your enemy, right? Politics is not about going back and forth, not about debate. It's about destroying your existential evil enemy. And this is what Peter Thiel, a Trump supporting billionaire, is literally lecturing on right now and has been for a few years. And so all of this is overtly Nazi stuff, right? They are literally mingling Nazism and the words of Jesus Christ in the Bible, which they're twisting. And another thing I noticed since the memorial is that while they wanted to blame the left, they wanted to blame trans people, there's also a huge part of the right wing movement that really, really, really wants to blame the Jews and
Yep.
Israel for Charlie Kirk's assassination. There's this
I've been
whole
I've been following that as well.
powerful conspiracy theory. And if you look at the history of this kind of apocalyptic thinking in Judeo Christian Western culture, these uprisings of these surges of apocalyptic thinking often coincide with an attack on Jews with anti-Semitism. And Norman Cohn, who was a Cambridge scholar who wrote a whole book about this stuff back in the 50s, saw the Nazi movement as the latest incarnation of this in the 20th century, of this apocalyptic millenarian good versus evil thinking. And so in so many ways, we're seeing these things intertwine. And it's about the most dangerous place you can get in politics. At the same time, it shows the level of desperation that they have reached. There's a quote, I don't know, was it from the Simpsons? Prayer is the last refuge of a scoundrel. Well,
Yeah.
apocalyptic religion is a desperate gambit for a political movement.
You mentioned some of these other right wing movements. Excuse me. I've been paying attention for the past week and a half, and there's another fissure that has developed within MAGA right now, which is why I think they're actually much weaker than people think they are, and why I think this performance is actually them actually trying to mask their weakness. Is Candace Owens, and I've watched Candace Owens for the first time in my life, so you don't have to, Gil. And she's on a warpath. Says that she's Charlie Kirk's friend. She does not believe Kash Patel and the FBI's, if you will, explanation in the text messages. She's also talked about, Israel pressuring Charlie Kirk before his death. Then you have Tucker Carlson. His speech was a nod to many white nationalists, and a lot of people saw that as a nod to, anti-Semitism. Then you have others like Steve Bannon. They don't believe the narrative. But it was really interesting with Candace Owens, and I think she'll get there. She hasn't gone there yet in blaming Israel and the Jews. Is She talked about this isn't left versus right. I've evolved on these issues. This is about what's doing the right thing, and all of us coming around and battling these demonic forces at play. And she used the word demonic forces. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And you also see, Tucker Carlson at the memorial. Also, a lot of people said on the nose was kind of talking about Israel and the Jews. Talk to us about this demonic forces language.
Well, when you're up against a demonic, devilish force, it justifies anything you might have to do to defeat them, right? Everything becomes moral, even violence, even, say, suspending the Constitution or elections to win. So that's the aim of defining your enemy as a demon. Instead of saying, hey, we're all human beings with different opinions and we have to solve these problems, you say, hey, you're a demon, you're evil, and I will do whatever it takes to win because we can't play fair with the devil. So that's a part of it. The other side of it is by framing things in such harsh terms, such final existential terms, you try to encourage a sense of tribal cohesion and unity, right? If you're against the demons, you're on our side. If you're for the demons, you're on their side. So MAGA and the tech fascist alliance is a very fractious alliance. There's all these different groups, and some of them kind of hate each other and are starting to fight. In fact, a couple of weeks ago at NatCon, the big conservative convention, there were some people calling for a holy war against tech because they said these guys are apostates to our faith. They're betraying our species. They're destroying our children. So some of the religious extremists in the Republican Party don't like the tech guys, don't want them in the party, don't want them in the movement. So there are these fractions. They're always fighting with each other, the right wingers.
Oh yeah,
They have all these beefs. Nick Fuentes hated Charlie Kirk. Laura Loomer hated Charlie Kirk. They all deleted their hateful tweets after he
I
got
remember that.
killed. So they're calling for unity, but they can't even unify themselves. And so the demonic language is meant to unify their side and say we're all against the demons. Again, back to the Nazi philosopher Carl Schmitt, who is beloved by Peter Thiel, you have to identify who the enemy is. And then everybody goes against the enemy. Of course, if you eliminate that enemy, you find a new enemy, probably the tech bros or whatever. But so that's what it's about. It's about framing a very clear enemy in an existential battle to once and for all resolve our political differences through the manipulation, the overt manipulation of religious ideas.
Can you talk to us about how J.D. Vance went all in and said that during the memorial?
Well, J.D. Vance is really the bridge between the tech fascists and the religious fascists in the Republican Party. And a big part of this in my analysis, now this is getting a little ahead of where I plan to be, but it's hard to not think about it this way. What happens after Trump? What happens to the MAGA cult? There's only one Trump, and no one else is like him, right? He's this unusual character who has this charisma that has created this big political cult that's made him president of the United States. That's a big existential problem that the fascists face in the future. If Trump is gone, if he dies, or if he's out of office, then what do? So I see this religious movement also as a way to try to replace the Trump cult with some religious based political cult that someone like a J.D. Vance can then step into as the leader. They have to create a mass movement that can survive Trump. And so J.D. Vance, who just converted to Catholicism a few years ago and is sort of a someone who speaks of Jesus as if Jesus was a vicious, angry Republican on Reddit, right? Instead of
With an AR-15.
yeah, or 4chan, I should say. Exactly. Yeah, he's going to adopt any mask he needs to try to become president. So he's all in on this stuff, and I should say that a precursor to this apocalypse demon framing was a book last year called Unhumans that
Yep.
came out. And the
Yep.
book Unhumans, written by a couple of far right wing activists, the thesis was that progressives are communists, and communists are unhuman demonic figures who are on earth only to murder and cause misery. And that conservatives needed to realize this and work to basically destroy these unhuman enemies they had. And if you read their description over through the book of, because I read the entire awful book, basically they make it sound like anybody who might vote for Kamala Harris or listen to NPR is one of these unhumans. So the right wing always tries out these ideas, publishes books about these ideas, has think tank collaborations on these ideas before they market them. And
Yep.
the reason I bring up Unhumans is because J.D. Vance praised the book and had a comment on the book's jacket cover. So he is all in on this dark manipulation of religion for political purposes. J.D. Vance is a dangerous man who will do whatever it takes to get power.
I agree, and I think he'll even kick Usher to the curb and try to get Erica Kirk as his wife and slip in because he tried to take over Charlie Kirk's seat, and Candace Owens shot some strays and said, "You cannot. No one can replace the king. I see the people who are trying to slip in. No one can replace Charlie King's seat." So I think there's two things that's happening right now. Well, several things are happening, and I think the scary shit that you've mentioned, I've also paid attention to. We'll talk about that. We'll make Cliff Notes version of that. But also, I think there's some good that's happening. Let's talk about the good. Is the fissures. People aren't paying attention to the fissures. Candace Owens has a huge sway over MAGA, and she is not following the script, and she was not invited to the memorial, if you all notice, okay? Uh, Candace Owens promoting these theories, not these theories, but she says, hey, I'm not saying Israel was involved, but I know Israel and Bill Ackman and pro-Israel billionaires pressured Charlie Kirk, and he was really afraid and he loved Israel but doesn't like Benjamin Netanyahu. Tucker Carlson also said, yes, I second that story. And then Candace Owens says, we need to get right with God and we need to find out what happened. And I don't believe the deep state and I don't believe Kash Patel and their demonic forces at play. This, folks, you might laugh, but it's such a big deal within MAGA that Benjamin Netanyahu, not once, but twice, has to come out and say, oh, no, 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 Israel had nothing to do with Charlie Kirk. We love Charlie Kirk, right? So you got the fissure there with Candace Owens. You got the fissure with Tucker and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey when it comes to Israel, because there's an America First movement. You got the Groypers and Nick Fuentes, who are further to the right than Charlie Kirk. You got Laura Loomer now turning on Marjorie Taylor Greene and some other folks. And then you got the economy going down. And then also the big, one of the big other Achilles cankles for him is Epstein, which is not going away. So I see a rupturing, fissuring, weakening MAGA movement going further and further extreme, Gil. Now, the scary part about this is as they're dwindling, as they're getting more like fractured, as there's scandal after scandal, as they run out of band-aids to put over all the holes, they're going to go more full tilt, like you said, apocalyptic, full tilt fascist, full tilt authoritarian. And they're going to use and abuse the power that they have to create this narrative of good versus evil and go for martial law. Am I wrong?
They're going to try something like that, right? If you look at, again, returning to the Nazi philosopher Carl Schmitt that they're all really into, the way that you claim power is not through democratic means, but by declaring an existential emergency and seizing power under those circumstances. So they're going to continually look for some kind of emergency that justifies a further taking of power or perhaps some weird interference with the elections. On the other hand, this stuff is really hard to do, right? Success for this handful of clowns requires destroying the most powerful democracy that has ever existed and requires doing that against the wishes of the vast majority of the American people. And so I would encourage people to see this also as flailing and to get
Yeah.
ready for a new phase of this where we become a lot more aggressive in resisting it, get a lot louder, and really scare the hell out of them. I mean, look at Disney put Jimmy Kimmel back on the air after a few days of these MAGA people claiming that he was done for, right? We have a tremendous amount of power. So we have to see that they're going to go harder, but we have to go harder as well. Trump is backing down once the courts tell him he can't do something, right? So there's still some fear there. There's still some rules they're following. And I think we have to be bolder in pushing back. And further, we have to start thinking what accountability is going to look like when we take this country back and deal with the people who did everything they could to destroy it.
So I did a tweet or a post on Blue Sky a couple of days ago, I think on the weekend, about accountability that went kind of viral. And I said it'll be critical that when and if we, the majority, take this country back from this apocalyptic, pro-death cult, there has to be accountability because there was no accountability after the war on terror. There was no accountability after Trump's first term. And my fear, Gil, is that the way America works, the way power works, the way that white supremacy works, is we coddle and forgive white rage. I give you monuments named after Civil War traitors, right? I give you the hagiography of Charlie Kirk. And I believe one of the main reasons why we're in this situation is that Joe Biden and the Democrats were so weak, unwilling to actually exercise their power. And they had milquetoast centrists who were more beholden to institutions like Merrick Garland than to justice. And you're literally seeing that those people, Donald Trump never saw the inside of a courtroom. Like he never saw the inside of a jail for inciting a violent insurrection. So my concern is what's going to happen is in the interest of civility and peace and truth and reconciliation, all of these people are going to fail up because in Washington D.C., as you know, they all failed up, and every single person who promoted the war on terror has never apologized for it. Is on Substack getting paid. Progressives give them money, by the way. And so, what makes you so confident that America will finally hold them accountable? Because I agree with you. This will only be repeated unless this time we finally say enough is enough. We're going to try you, due process, or we're going to prosecute you. And then a judge and jury of your peers is going to hold you accountable. If you're free, you're not guilty, so be it. But if you're guilty, your ass is going to jail. This has never happened before, Gil. So what gives you confidence that this is what this country is going to do?
Well, I don't think there's ever been such a concerted attempt to murder the United States of America in plain daylight as there is right now. And I do think there are some obstacles to accountability, the main one being mainstream Democratic leaders who, as you said, are going to try to sweep it under the rug and not do anything about it. But the thing is this, even if it fails this time, even if these guys fail this time, they're going to try it again unless there's
That's what I'm saying.
accountability. And they're going to win at some point because they're doing everything they can to tear apart the country, to reduce access to education, to control all the algorithms. And so, uh, I think we need a new generation of leaders. And accountability is always a very popular word, by the way, in polls in the United States. Everybody wants accountability, but we need people to start talking about it so that we have something we can aspire to look forward to. And we're not just against what's happening now. We're actively talking about how we get the country back on track and prevent anything like this from happening again. So it's not without its challenges. This whole time is fraught with challenges, and I'm optimistic in a pessimistic way. But I do see a lot of flailing right now. And when you got to start literally trying to use the Bible
Yeah.
to defend the actions of these corrupt and evil men, you're in a pretty desperate place.
I see flailing too, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I said that and people were like, Waj, what are you talking about? I said that entire display, that entire rally was weakness performing. And I use the word perform very deliberately. It's performance, it's performing as strength. But I said, especially when the majority rallies together, this country values the color green more so than the color white. I give you Jimmy Kimmel. And then the cult is desperately trying. I don't know if you saw the news today, but Sinclair and Nexstar have still said they're not going to bring back Jimmy Kimmel. So they're still beholden to the cult, which means that Jimmy Kimmel's going to be coming back, but he's not going to be on a whole bunch of stations. And if ABC, and I think this is where we come in, if we pressure ABC to say play hardball, ABC then can strip all their programming from Sinclair and Nexstar, which means all of their viewers across America, instead of watching all the shows that Disney and ABC produce, right, that they all like, they'll just watch reruns of Family Feud for the next 2 weeks. And at the end of the day, I think this week proved, Gail, proved my point that this country's main religion is capitalism. The color green trumps the color white, and we have the numbers and the majority. And if we withhold our money and if we use our voice, we can get them to bend the knee. That's what happened, folks. That's why ABC did it. I just want everyone to be really clear. ABC saw all of us, including myself, and I got kids, cancel Disney, cancel Hulu. Their stock went down, and they're like, oh shit, we're being punished for our cowardice. And then you saw small calls of boycotts from talent saying, I'm not going to work with you again. And they're like, fidelity to the tyrant, money. Fidelity to the tyrant, money. Oh, money, money, money. So this is where I think we have the power and the strength. But, speaking about the Democrats, and I think why we have to pressure them, because everyone says vote blue no matter who. I disagree with that, Gil. I don't need a Schumer. If you're telling me my fighters are Schumer and Jeffries, I'm not going to vote blue. I'm going to put pressure on the Democrats to get the right type of fighters to meet this moment and the next moment moving forward. And I say this because I don't know if you saw it, but 95 Democrats voted with Republicans for the Charlie Kirk Remembrance Act. A whole bunch did it, but 95 did, including Representative Jeffries. Your take on that?
The Democratic Party is probably the number one enabler of American fascism today, besides the Republican Party. I mean, we have a party that's just rolled over. What are they even doing anymore? So I think we need a major overhaul of the party and to get some of these dusty corpses out of leadership positions and get in there people who can communicate, people who can be bold, who can be brave, and who can make people feel inspired to act and to push for a future that is far beyond this terrible phase we're in. And instead, we get these collaborator types who just want to bow down and go along and somehow make it all work out. The old Washington like that is dead. It's been dead for a long time. But some of these people who were there 30 years ago still think Washington works the way it used to work, where you could make a deal. These are no longer those kinds of times. We even saw Gavin Newsom try to be a right wing podcaster for a minute. Even he
I remember
realized
that.
that's not going to work, right? It doesn't work. And it never was going to work. And I wish our
Well, Gil,
politicians
can
were
you remind
smart
them
enough
who
to
were?
know that.
Can you remind them who was Gavin Newsom's first two guests on his podcast?
His first guest was Charlie Kirk. I think his
Yep.
second guest was Steve Bannon.
Yep.
And Charlie Kirk completely dominated Gavin Newsom, and Gavin Newsom praised him, right? So, but he's spun out of that now, and he's come. He's a politician. He'll do whatever it takes to, whatever. Someone convinced him, probably all the white boys who hangs out with, that was the way to go, and now he knows it's not. So it's good that he's back. We have to encourage more politicians to abandon this sort of collaborative model with fascism and push for something different. And we see people doing that. We see Mamdani, look at him. He's become the new phenom of the party. People are hungry for real leadership. They're hungry for new voices. And I think you're right. I spent my career in the establishment Democratic Party. I don't believe it exists anymore. I believe it's dead and we're pretending it's alive. And I think we need something new to fill its space. And that could be a new generation of leaders who are capable of actually defending this country and its values instead of laying down and just taking it.
You spoke about messaging and storytelling, and I've said this before, is that when it comes to basic storytelling, this is the formula, folks. There needs to be a hero or heroes who want to achieve a goal. They can't get to their goal because there is a villain. A villain is impeding their process. The villain must be defeated so the hero can get to the goal and get the happy ending. Basic storytelling. Republicans are very good at this. And now, an act of desperation for the 1,200 people who are joining us. I'm with Gil Duran. He is a journalist. He is the editor of Nerd Reich. He follows the broligarchy. He follows Peter Thiel and the grooming of J.D. Vance. And he right now has been on it when it comes to Peter Thiel doing Commonwealth Club lectures on the Antichrist, folks. Totally normal. And this type of messianic, apocalyptic language that has been used, especially after the murder of Charlie Kirk, good versus evil, right versus wrong, demonic forces. People should pay attention to that because that's a story that the right wing is using right now. That we, the lovers of Christ, the lovers of Trump, the lovers of Kirk, are the good guys. We're the ones that have to save our children and our humanity and Western civilization from, quote, demonic forces. And folks, was tested out, if you will, through the 4chan conspiracy theory of that was spread very deliberately by Donald Trump, QAnon. QAnon also said that we have to protect the children from the left, and the left means anyone who's opposed to Donald Trump, who they said were, wait for it, demon worshiping child predators and rapists. That's what QAnon is all about, which is why QAnon has radicalized individuals and groups to commit violence because they literally think, Gil, that they are saving children from people like us who worship the devil and drink children's blood. I'm not making this up. So now they've taken it to a national stage, Gil, right? And it is a very compelling story that I think people shouldn't sleep on. I know people say, oh, that's stupid, that's silly. Yeah, yeah. It motivates a lot of people. So my question to you is, what should be the counter narrative of good guy versus bad guy that you think Democrats need to promote at this moment?
I think we need to focus on the corruption and the failures and the scandals and not allow them to create these counter narratives, right? These narratives are that they're creating are meant to cover up all of the problems that they have. And I think it's important to point out too, and I wish more people in the press would do this, like people say who write for the New York Times, that there's a conscious effort being made to manipulate religion and religious language in our politics. By exposing what's happening, you can really short circuit some of these things. Sort of like when you see a video of how a magician does a trick, and now the trick doesn't work anymore because you know exactly that he's hiding an egg in his palm and he's shoving the handkerchief in the egg, right? Like you have to expose the trick. And what I see is that these journalists who are supposed to be smart and supposed to be at the biggest, most influential papers, they take a really long time to finally tell people what's going on, right? That thing that happened, I mean, I read all the stories in the Times about it. They don't talk about the fact that it's a strategy, one that's been laid out in books, one that Peter Thiel's lecturing on, and they seem to be oblivious to the fact that this is what the right wing does. They create narratives in a laboratory, they test them, and then they unleash them, right? And I think that kind of knowledge is really important. But mostly we've got to remember that this is a failing administration, an unpopular administration, and we have to keep demanding the Epstein files, demanding justice and law enforcement for Tom Homan, who was recorded taking a bag of cash by undercover FBI agents, right? We have to
And
make
by the
sure
way,
that,
yesterday he
yeah,
didn't deny it. Did you see
yeah,
that interview?
yes, definitely. Um, this is about corrupt versus good, right? And they're the ones that are on the bad side, right? They're the baddies. It's really, really obvious. And no amount of pretending to be Christian is going to change that. And even people in their own base have a big problem with this Epstein hiding stuff. So, it's amazing that they're talking about Satan and the Antichrist all of a sudden, demons and evil, as they still refuse to release the Epstein files, right? That's
And,
just amazing.
and Glenn Maxwell was photographed just calmly walking to her yoga class in her minimum security camp in Texas. It's all there for the picking, folks, but you need someone to be aggressive and call it out and expose it and connect the dots. And I do believe that this is a fissuring, weakened MAGA movement. If you look at all the polls, he's down. Negative double digits on the economy, on trade, on tariffs. He's down on immigration. They've already done overreach. I think they've reached maximum overreach on Charlie Kirk because a lot of the normies had no idea who he was. Like I've said, my wife, she had no idea. She's like, was Charlie Kirk like a saint? And then she read about him. She go, oh my God, he's a freak, right? And most normies are like, this is like cultish behavior. This is wild. The punishment of Jimmy Kimmel, using Charlie Kirk to punish Jimmy Kimmel, who's wildly popular. Overreach, sending National Guard members to Chicago, threatening to send to Chicago, cracking skulls. Overreach, kidnapping people, sending them to CCOT. Overreach, very unpopular. The economy now is sinking, folks. The his stupid trade war has raised the prices on goods. His soy farmers are killing themselves. His soy farmers are literally so desperate that they're killing themselves because China has stopped buying soy from America and gone to Brazil. So this is a bad place for America. We're going down. But that means this administration is going down, and we have the numbers. I believe that MAGA, will get more desperate, more violent, more dangerous because Donald Trump is like a rabid rat in the corner. He'll chew through everything, Gil, and he doesn't look right as well. And I also agree with you is that now you're seeing everyone else like Julius Caesar, especially JD Vance, sharpening the knives. They're sharpening the knives, but JD Vance, I don't think, and you mentioned this, I don't think anyone can step in. Whatever like cocktail of uh, ugliness and depravity and carnival barker charm that Trump has cannot be replicated by anyone right now. I think Stephen Miller, not JD Vance, but that doesn't mean they're not dangerous. I do think because you talk so much about the Nerd Reich, a narrative I want to throw out to you is anyone who wants to galvanize the majority, disaffected voters, young voters, independents, Republicans, and Democrats. I think the easy narrative is it's the 99% versus the 1%. It's us against the elitists. It's us against the broligarchy. They're drinking all of our milkshake. It's Donald Trump and his billionaire friends and David Ellison and Larry Ellison and Andreessen and Mark Zuckerberg and friggin' all these other guys like JD Vance and Peter Thiel. When more and more people learn about Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, Gil, they are freaked out. They're like, these guys are straight up freaks. This type of message, us versus the broligarchy, to me is the slam dunk message. And I still do not see the leadership take it. Because the leadership, if they took it, that means they have to finally stop sucking at the corporate teat and sucking at Apex teat. But that's just my take. Gil.
It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. Jesus Christ said that, and if we want to talk about Christianity and politics, I think that sentence should be our entire focus, because I
Mm.
think that Jesus was really speaking to us from thousands of years ago about the predicament we are in right now, the tyranny of evil, wicked, wealthy people. And that's what this is all about. The only people who want this are these wealthy men, and there are a lot more of us than there are of them, and this is over when we say it's over.
Yeah, I think they should use that verse. Why not use? Democrats might not like this, progressives might not like this, but I come from religious communities. Use religion. Use the verses to promote social justice. MLK did. Malcolm X did. Gandhi did. It's a win. But you actually have to stand for something, people. You have to stand for something. Gil, fantastic as always. Please shamelessly promote yourself.
You can find me at thenerdreich.com, and I'm writing a book about these guys that'll be out next year, and I hope you all buy it.
Oh, that's awesome. What you have a title?
The Nerd Reich, Silicon Valley Fascism, and the War on Global Democracy.
When is it? When is it expected to come out?
Don't have an exact date yet, but it'll be 26 from Avid Reader at Simon and Schuster.
Oh, awesome. And also, if y'all are in the Bay Area, Gil is hosting me and we're moderating and part of conversation at the Commonwealth Club, I think in October ago.
Yeah, in October.
Yeah, so next month, if anyone's in the Bay Area, come check out me and Gil doing this in real time. I promise we won't be boring. Folks, come back in about 15 minutes. I have Katie Fang at 2 p.m. I got Joy Reid at 3:30 p.m. and I got Jess Craven at 4:30 p.m. Today is one of those blockbuster shows. Gil kicked it off. There's 1,300, almost 1,400 people watching us right now. This will be up on my Substack and also Gil's Substack. What we're talking about is how the right wing now is going to use and it is using apocalyptic Christian language to create a narrative of good versus evil, us versus them, as a precursor to try to start a type of, if you will, apocalyptic political war where they can crush their enemies through any illegal means necessary. It has been done before. It is not unique. It is happening right now, and they're using and abusing the murder of Charlie Kirk to try to get there. However, MAGA is also weak. And one good news that I want to end on is you saw this week the power of the people. Jimmy Kimmel was never supposed to come back. Doesn't matter if you like Kimmel or not. Jimmy Kimmel was never supposed to come back. ABC had fully capitulated to the bullying of the FCC and Donald Trump. And because the people collected together and said, we have money, and took their money away from ABC, he will be returning tonight at, I believe, 11:30 p.m. So we have the numbers. Be kind, be decent, be informed, and please, oh, please, don't be a fascist. Thanks, Gil.